G'day members, and welcome to our preview of Flemington for the 12th of September 2015, Mackay Diva Stakes Day. Looks a beauty of a day's racing. We're getting back to obviously the really good horses, and it's really shines through in the fields for tomorrow. So at this stage, you know, the reports are that the track's very good. All around the track, I've put a link in the members area for you, just above this video, with a little report you can access from an organisation that does a good little report on the track. So check that out. We'd expect that it'll play generally how Flemington does, and as per usual, the early prices will be going through here are just an indication. It's basically the first run, so what happens is maps change, horses come out with scratchings, and we obviously do a bit more further work, but probably not a lot will change, but just can change with certain runners, especially with the lightly race types of horses. So if there's something you think's a good chance, and I've got huge odds, don't sort of pay too much attention to that yet. We'll see how we go. So we'll just start with the first race, and this is an alert we sent out yesterday for Petits Falou. Obviously, the horse, and I thought that its first two runs were really good, very strong performance, and then obviously it stretched out over the 1100 metres at Caulfield and was able to get the job done well also. What was equally impressive was she was able to basically showcase the overall speed that she was able to show at 1,000 metres at 1100, and you know, that's certainly something that we were looking for. So it's quite hard to not see her being right in the finish here. So the positives are obviously she's undefeated. She runs very quick time. She's always rated very highly on the day relative to the older horses. Damien Oliver's a great jockey. Kieran Maher's training very well. The horse has drawn pretty well. So they're all big ticks. The couple of little negatives, it'll be fourth up first prep, and we don't know how she's going to handle the straight on. Basically have to bet to see that. But look, I think that the positives outweigh a couple of little unknowns here, and certainly if you're able to, you know, get, you know, $1.95, $2, and you know, that sort of looks to be a fairly decent sort of price, I feel. You never know what will sort of happen on race day. There isn't any $2 around anymore, but there's certainly $1.95 at a few places, and no, I probably wouldn't be surprised to see the horse nudge back out to around even money tomorrow, and possibly tighten up a little bit. The unknowns we've got on the race is obviously there's, as you can see, the crosses. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 horses resuming. So, you know, that always throws a little bit of a spanner in the works with the ability of some of those to improve. And certainly horses like Payroll and My Pipette look to be you know, pretty good types. So I think that they'll go pretty well here, and I don't doubt that that, you know, they'll be right in the finish. But just whether or not they'll be able to, you know, get over the fit horse, I'm just not quite sure at the moment. But certainly Petits Falou, rates high across the board, looks a bit of value. We'll be happy to back that horse. On to the second. Look, it's not an easy race. I sort of had a look at the results from the corresponding races this year to last year, and pretty much, you know, the figures have sort of landed on similar types of horses throughout the day. I thought Sir Laszlo was quite good at Sandown. He produced quite a fast last sectional. He looked to really appreciate getting back on top of the ground, and I guess if we sort of track his form back this campaign, he really has been racing on rain-affected ground. He did have one run there, which was at Morphettville, where the late sectionals would suggest that the straight was in pretty good order, but really we hadn't seen this horse exposed to a rock hard track, and he certainly was given a firm track back in 78 grade at Sandown, and the race probably didn't look much to the eye, and it is Sandown, so you always have to knock the figures back a little bit there when you're looking at the clock, but certainly the horse's performance was excellent. Craig Williams takes the ride. If this horse was able to come out, I've got it running around 120 on the speed. Even if we sort of put that within a range of 114 to 120, so if he could sort of rate within a couple of lengths of what he did at Sandown on the speed, I think that this horse is definitely the one to beat. So he's our top raider. When they're decent overs, we even if the race is a little bit dodgy, we're generally sort of happy to sort of play them. So look, I could certainly make a case to back him here. The other one's Albinetti, who's our second raider. I've sort of tuned the figures to the lower weighted horses here. They have got the best speed figures coming in, and I think that's the way to go in this particular race. Look, Albinetti's been a run short, a half a run short, and a quarter of a run short, and it's on the 7-day backup now. Really, the way it closed off the race, it was solid throughout all sectionals. A key jockey change back to Dwayne Dunn. I think that certainly this horse is ready to peak, and it will certainly be, right in the finish. It has to get, the 2,500, but it certainly wasn't disgraced behind Big Memory last campaign in the Herbert Power. So I think that we could be pretty confident that this horse is probably going to acquit itself pretty well, and they look the two. So look, I think that at this stage, I'd sort of be happy to pretty confidently say that'll be the play for us. There could be a little bit of tweaking as it's a 2,500 metre race. Any scratchings are vital to the map and the tempo of the race. But it's sort of hard to knock those horses. And certainly Rascallo, look, he's going all right. He sort of might just be that half a run short, but he rated pretty well last start at Caulfield. He was only beaten 2.5 lengths behind our Voodoo Prince, and certainly his last exposure to Flemington over 2,500, he was able to win a Group 3. So I sort of think his run last start, probably was okay. I think a pretty good launch pad into this race. So he certainly looks also to be around the mark, and he's certainly the class horse. Just the fitness will certainly tell with him, but $16 is quite a big price from what I'm looking at. So we'll have a look there and see how we go. But certainly Sir Laszlo is a play there. Look, this is a difficult race. I'm just going to shade this a very light red. Not confident in what we've got here at the moment. It's a rough market. Certainly a bit of work to go. There's not as long-term members would understand. What we're looking for is correlation between basically these four KPIs, and that's the raw rating, class rank, speed rank, jockey rank, and trainer rank. And when we don't get a lot of correlation, it's generally not a race you really want to be going very hard in at all. Just more of a race that, if you end up with a top rater that looks not a bad price, it's worth probably having a small bet because they go well long term. But look, there's form from everywhere here and nothing lines up, and it's certainly not a race that we'd be interested in going very hard at. There'll be horses that will come out and be scratched, and until that happens and we can rejig the market and really drill into it tomorrow morning, it's certainly not a race we're in a hurry to be betting into. On to the next, and look, much the same. Not really that keen to dive into anything. I've been, although I'm not sort of putting out any ratings for Sydney personally, I have been doing some Sydney ratings just to sort of get on top of the horses that'll be coming down. And look, Raphael's Cat came through not a bad trial. He sort of had the year scrubbed off, and there's a fair bit happening out of that trial. He then went to Canterbury and certainly put in quite a good performance, leading all the way. And just on the day, sort of winners were coming from off pace, not well back, but not, you didn't have to be hard up on the fence. So look, to try and not confuse ourselves too much, he did look to be, really pushed along in the trial. But, if we just take his first up run on face value, I thought the horse was fantastic. And there's a little bit of form dripping through to suggest that some of the horses out of that race have gone well. And also to the opposite side of that, some have gone poorly. So just not exactly sure what to make of this horse. And the other little thing is he's got to go from the turning track to down the straight. But he just, no matter what I do, this horse is hard in my market. And it's sort of, no matter how much you look at the figures, he's just there. So I think he's a player here. Look, ready for victory. Didn't have much luck last start. Certainly we know where that horse stands. He's going to be a great chance. $3.50 at the moment. On the books, he may just get out a little bit more, closer to $4. And Black Vanquish comes in with a pretty strong speed figure, and there's been a fair bit of whispers around about this horse. Well, not whispers because they're public now, but a bit of talk about his jump outs, and King Like, who has ran pretty well in his only couple of runs and could be a sharp improver. But that's probably where it really ends. We'll just sort of have to see. And just on the rankings, Brockhoff, good trainer and number one trainer and a good rider. And we've got a couple of riders down here also. So Vlad Jurek, who's going really well, was on last bullet, and obviously Craig Williams didn't have a lot of luck on debut, Boston Light. So we'll have a look at that horse with Williams on board. So as you can see, the visualization can try and help catch you from missing a horse, but it doesn't necessarily mean we'll make any adjustments. But at this stage, it's just a bit of a wait. And we'll see how we end up with those top-rated runners. On to the fifth, and we alerted Thursday that Disposition was certainly a horse we were interested in. He was $3 at that stage, and he's sort of been backed into $2.70 and getting back out to $3 now. I actually sort of get the feeling that he might sort of get out a little bit further, but probably not a great deal. I wouldn't expect this horse will blow too much. Unless he obviously parades terribly, which I really wouldn't think would be the case. Such is the history of the horse. He's run first up last campaign behind Wangina, and the Stratum Star and whatnot. So that's certainly standout form for this. And he had a long campaign leading into that. He had 3 trials, and 6 runs before a 77-day break and Melbourne, and then perform that well. So, he's had a good break here, 161 days off. He's probably, grown and he's a lot stronger. He's going to be a better horse. No doubt he'll be a good improver, this horse. It's just going to be his condition that will probably just tell the tale late whether he sort of does a bit better than $3 or gets crunched in. Yesterday's songs, obviously this horse, he doesn't win a lot, and he does win, but he tends to flash home a lot, I should say. So he's a horse that was sort of on our radar quite early with his run at Bendigo on debut, and look, his run in the Group 1 over in Adelaide was huge, flashing from last behind Flamberge in the Goodwood, and obviously not a lot went right at Moonee Valley at his next run when he started fave and it didn't work out, and then he ended up getting a good run through for Boss to win at Flemington. And I thought that he motored home really well at Caulfield first up. I think certainly the 1,400 metres is a tick for this horse, and he looks to me to be the main danger. He's short enough, so despite the fact I think he's the main danger, I sort of couldn't touch him at 390. But we'll sort of wait and see what the market does. It looks like a race where I've probably got quite a high confidence that, all being right with this position, of course, that it could be a good Quinella play if we can get a bit of 8 and 9. And certainly Zabrins is a horse that I've got my eye on to win a race over the Carnival. This horse loves hard tracks and probably going to need a mile to get his absolute best, but he's going to be right there, this horse. And I think that despite not being able to stamp himself on the board with class, as you can see there, he's 11th on class. He's certainly right up there on exposed speed figures. Obviously, when we're dealing with a horse of lower quality, we generally like to see a higher grade jockey on. We don't have that. And I've just sort of noticed that it's very competitive with the trainers over the course of tomorrow. You're sort of splitting hairs to knock one or the other generally. They're just looking at the values on the final ratings overall figures, and there's sort of not a lot between them, whereas there is a lot between the jockeys. So that's a little bit interesting. We sort of didn't do the rankings last spring, so it'll just be interesting to monitor them and see what effect the trainer rankings have on the absolute results. I know the jockey ones do, but interesting to see if the trainer matters as much as the jockey off of this sheet. And the other one's Jacqueline Obey. It was quite hard to obviously fault his run first up. He went really well. We know the horse has got a lot of ability. He was flying last start, and from all indications, it looks like he's going to have a big campaign. The problem with this horse is he ran 9.5 lengths above the average from a standing start to the 400, and then had almost an 8-length drop off over the last 400 metres. So that's an absolute gut buster in my book first up, and I think the horse is quite a big danger here of possibly having a flat run. So, he's probably not one that, if we rated him off that run, he's hard in the market. He's probably about $5, but I've just got that little concern that he could have a flat run. I haven't put him right out of the market. I just sort of think that, if we just have to be a little bit more conservative with that horse. But, to go like that first up, generally you do feel the effects. I know he's a tough horse, and he showed last prep that he could continually back up, but he did have sort of 6 or 7 runs under his belt before he started doing that. So he's just a little watch here, Jacqueline Obey, but certainly disposition is the one we're interested here in race 5, and we'll formulate Quinella's place bets and whatnot around that horse. On to the 6th, and look, this is a difficult race. I sort of profiled the race from last year, and it was interesting. We had Chautauqua won this race last year, and he snuck through my guard. He was a restricted horse at that stage, and didn't really have the figures. And the horse that sort of fits that profile this year is his stablemate, Kaepernick. Whether or not I'm not saying Kaepernick can live up to, and run as well as Chautauqua, but he sort of fits the profile of the horse that won it last year. The other horse that was sort of similar was In Cahoots, who was, a horse that had a pretty good time of it. And, those two horses, Chautauqua and In Cahoots, ended up having really good campaigns. And, In Cahoots ended up, winning a nice race at Caulfield. He had 2 trials and a first up run in Cahoots behind Terra Vista. And he sort of went into this race with, a little bit of fitness under his belt. And, the horse that, sort of reminds me a little bit of him is Churchill Dancer in this race. He obviously won quite well at Moonee Valley last start and ran well first up, and he's a straight specialist. So they're sort of the two that if we look at last year's, and then last year's also we had horses running into the top 4. We had Temple of Boom. He ran second, and we had Speediness, and he ran 4th, and they sort of weren't beaten far and ran really well, and they were both really the what you would call the class runners of that race, up with the high weight. And we've certainly only got one of them in this race tomorrow, and that's Lucky Hustler. So the more I look at the race, I sort of think that we're probably going to need to see Rich Enough do it before we dive into him. He really obviously was beaten by a good one in bounding, but the figures just really were quite off. So for him to get to where he was last campaign, he sort of needs to improve more than you can give him coming out of that first up run. Churchill Dancer's flying. He's going to be in the race for a very long time. He's got the best speed rating in the race down the straight, if we're excluding Rich Enough's figures from when he was a 3-year-old. So, looking at that run he had at Moonee Valley, he's going to go really, really well. And certainly Gregor's didn't have much luck first up. Under the Louvre goes well. So I think we can work around light enough. That leaves us with horses like, Lucky Hustler, Churchill Dancer, Gregor's, Under the Louvre, Kaepernick. What we do with them, I'm not too sure, but certainly our top rater here, Lucky Hustler, he's the class runner. He won a Group 1 first up last campaign. People always say that don't back Weir first up, but that's fair enough. But we also need to, pay attention to what horses do, and this is a horse that historically throughout his entire career has been a very good first up horse. So I don't really want to play too much into the Darren Weir theories. And certainly even last campaign, after he won first up at the Valley, he was only beaten 1.2 lengths by Dissident. So, I think that I think he's going to run pretty well, Lucky Hustler, and certainly with the current odds on offer, he looks to be a horse that we want on our side. And if we're going to be going against anyone, if we're going to be going one out on anything, it's probably going to be him with a little each way play. I've just noticed I've just taken the price for Churchill Dancer, so he's been snapped up basically into the rated price, still a little bit of overs. Kaepernick's been well backed. I could probably get Kaepernick, into $8 to $10, but there's really no way I could get him any shorter. Probably the only way you could get him shorter is if the outside was, a lot more quicker down the straight. But that's why we can wait and see. We're not forced to bet at this stage. But yeah, as I said before, certainly Lucky Hustler. You'd really think that he's going to be in the finish, and the way the market looks to be tracking, he might be a decent sort of price. And on last year's In Cahoots and Chiquata, the matchups here are Churchill Dancer and Kaepernick. On to the 7th, and look, I touched on this race in the newsletter. Looks a great race, and certainly, as I touched on, and hopefully you've all listened, I don't want to spend too much time on it again, but it's very hard to knock Boban. He's been a great horse for so long, but he just hasn't, really been beating the premium opposition, and which is okay if you can stamp yourself on the clock, and he hasn't really been doing that either. So, if you're going to beat up on the older horses and have tight finishes, we really want to see you put in huge bursts of speed, or for it to be strong overall. And really, a lot of his races on the clock, the way I measure it, that they've sort of been, 2 to 3 lengths off of that absolute, top class Group 1 standard wins. But, in saying that, it's very hard to put a line, through the horse or Waller. I've got him, obviously, as you can see there, he's third in my market, but I've sort of got him more around the 650 chance. Currently, I think that the $485 is under the odds. Look, Faulkner and Alpine Eagle, they're the ones for mine. Both horses have, speed figures around 125, which is elite on my end, and certainly they've been able to produce enormous runs more recently than Boban at Flemington down the straight. And Faulkner met Boban here last year and was able to beat him home. Boban, didn't probably have all go his way. And Alpine Eagle, I thought his trial was really good, and not a lot went right first up at Morphettville. And I don't really think that that run has a great deal of bearing on anything here, or that it should in a negative way. The horse, if you break down his race and look at his sectionals and whatnot, he ran as well as any horse could have from back there. So all the figures suggested that he's sort of a winner in our book. The way it all panned out, and he's had 2 runs at the mile, and one of them was at Morphettville, second up last campaign. On a firm track, he's second up here. The horse ran around 12 lengths above the average and was one of the top 10 fastest mile runs at that track in the last 5 or 6 years. So, he was moving, and his other run at a mile was here in the Guineas. The nose roll goes on, and, we obviously, we alerted members the other day, last night, or yesterday afternoon actually, to back those horses. So they've tightened up a little bit, and I probably wouldn't be surprised to see them tighten up a little bit more, and Boban to get a little bit out. And Prince of Penzance is probably the one out of the Boban race that is worth watching, and Entirely Platinum, he might be a little bit flat. But it's very hard on my figures to sort of, not too dissimilar to the market, but I can see a little bit of value in Faulkner and Alpine. On to the 8th, and look, Noble Protector, what a run first up last campaign. Obviously, she flew. It's very hard to knock her, but there are a few little things we just need to be mindful of, so we'll just run through them. As you can see, on the KPIs, she's quite strong across the board. It's quite hard to fault her at all with her price. She's around the mark. She's just sort of moved out a little bit on Betfair. There's not a great deal of volume. There's been a couple of grand traded, but she's out to the mid-4s probably can't read a great deal into that at this stage, but what we sort of need to just understand is that last campaign, when we first seen her in Australia, she sort of had, if I just go back to the 29th of March 2014, she had 3 runs overseas, a 77-day break. Then she had 2 runs overseas and a 58-day break to Australia. Then she had that run behind contributor. Then she went to Flemington. So they were both very good runs, but she had a lot of residual fitness under her belt. She then had 126 days off, and she had a 990-metre trial. She had an 1,190-metre trial, and then she had another 1,190-metre trial. So she had 3 trials under her belt leading into that dominant win where she ran, on my end, around 14 lengths above standard for Flemington over a mile, and smashed 134 speed, which, when you see that pop up on your screen, it's you start doing cartwheels. That was just a phenomenal run. Whether or not she's got the capacity to do that at this stage, I'm not sure. She's had 153 days off. She's only had 1 trial. It was on a heavy track, and I'm just sort of not quite sure that the grounding and conditioning that she's got under her belt at this stage. Certainly, if we got a positive yard report that she was trained right up, you'd want to half that 360 and make it $1.80. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if she probably wasn't as wound up. That doesn't mean, of course, that she can't win. It probably just means that it brings some others into the race, and that probably need to respect the yard report there. It's really going to give us a good amount of insight. But certainly I think, on form, the one to beat, absolutely no dramas there, no doubt about that. It's just going to be about the fitness. So it's all about the fitness tomorrow for Noble Protector. Look, I thought that Amicus ran pretty well first up in Sydney. She did pretty well, and just sort of tracking her form back. She went pretty well last prep, and we've seen it in the past with Waller. He gets these mares, and they're okay at 3, and they're okay here, and they're okay there, and then they just sort of come out and keep winning. So I'm not sure she's right there at the moment, but certainly if we're measuring what she's been able to do on the clock, she's returned at probably a level that she hasn't been at before. She went really, really well, and I think that's a platform for her to certainly leapfrog and have her best campaign. So, she was last campaign. She was just off. Fenway and First Seal and those types of horses, and I really wouldn't be surprised at this stage to see her leapfrog them. Just don't mind the look of this one at the moment, and if she can get a little bit of luck from the gate, I think she'll go really well. Look, the hopes are going really well. To our listeners that focus on Sydney, they're pretty good trainers, these guys, and they know when to get it right. Obviously, Blake Shin's in the family, and they've got 3 runners: Platinum Rocker, Madam Gangster, and Fenway. Shin's on Platinum Rocker. You'd have to think that the stepson would get the best ride, and it's sort of hard to not think that way. And you sort of go and have a look at Platinum Rocker, and I thought her most recent run was really good, and she needs a lot to go right, but generally it goes right at 1400, and she's been able to display good ability at 1400 in the past, and The riding, I think, is on the wall that tomorrow's going to be a good run for her. She has had 20. Sorry, not 21 days. Maybe just about 21 days, but she's had that gap between runs. And I just noted when I was doing form that she also had a gap between runs when she took on Lucky Gray over in the railway there and was only beaten half a length. So, you know, she can sort of race well off those breaks. And, you know, she looks to me to be the horse with a couple of runs and a trial under her belt that's got that fitness. The Vézelay race, look, you know, was a bit of a flop of a race, really. Madam Gangster won. She's going to be better over 1400, but why isn't she on it if it's the stable's best go? Fenway, she obviously is a real talent, but may need a little bit further. May's Dream, you know, she flew home last start. She's really good, but she tends to need very soft speed. You know, if we're looking at her really big finishes, it's all off of well below par early speed in races. But certainly it's hard to really put a line right through her. But, you know, she's gone almost 12 lengths below standard to the 400 at Caulfield first up. And it's just been sprint home. And there's no doubt that she's got a huge sprint. You know, she ran 11 and a half lengths above average for her last 400 at Caulfield first up last prep. And, you know, and then second up ran almost 8 lengths above average for her last 400, but she's gone almost 17 lengths below standard to the 400. So she finds herself, this May's Dream, generally in races that are very slowly run. And, you know, obviously her top speed's quite high. Yeah, I just have to have a think about her because she's got a good deal of class, but she's been unable to do it, you know, with a sustained effort on the few occasions that she's been exposed to that type of pressure. So yeah, look, Noble Protector is probably the one we want to play here, but we just really need to wait for the yard report to see how aggressively we go. But around the 360 is probably about right. Really, it's a horse we want to be on. It's just whether we should be having more on. On to the next and last. And Set Square's the horse that stands out here. You know, again, she resumed with a phenomenal run first up. It was a really strong effort, strong class overall for her, which was, you know, pretty much from my figures a peak. So she's returned at a new level with her class, and definitely how quick she ran was, you know, was quite strong also. So she's basically returned to PB for class and speed first up over 1400. We know she's an Oaks winner. She's going to get better over further. Just the little query here is that run going to flatten her a little bit? And that's just a little bit what I'm unsure about. You know, she's gone, you know, we touched on how slow May's Dream went to the 400. Well, you know, in the race that Set Square was in, she settled second last, and you know, to the 400 through the first couple of sections, she's gone, you know, almost 8 lengths above average to the 400. So just a totally different race, and a lot of tempo. Definitely she'll take good benefit out of that run and should be a sharp improver. But just whether it's taken the, you know, that spring out of her legs, just not quite sure. But certainly going really well. Observational, big win first up on debut in a first up last prep for the yard at Bendigo. The horse come from you know, back in the field and burnt the turf. The stable's starting to go pretty well, and you know, he really has to be monitored quite closely. The little problem with that race at Bendigo was that there hasn't really been a lot good happening out of it. So, you know, there's a little bit of a caveat on that form. You know, it's pretty weak looking back at it, but certainly it was a race where they went quite hard, and it probably flattened a lot of horses, I would say. So that could be, in fact, in favour of Observational, because he hasn't had a run since, whereas the others did go on, and most of them did nothing. So quite a brutal race. Iggy McCall's the fit horse. Look, she's going to be right at the top. Just whether or not she's got the absolute class to beat a Set Square, I don't think she does. If Set Square has recovered and you know, can build on that performance first up over 1400. I know there's a 4 kilo weight difference, but you know, Set Square to me just is a classier runner. Extra Zero, he's going to be putting in big strides this campaign and running well, as he generally does without winning. And Garoud's certainly one that goes very well when he's right. And, you know, we'd certainly be waiting here on a glowing push from the yard. If we're able to get a good push from the yard for this horse, then, you know, certainly is a horse that you want to be involved in, because he goes very, very well first up. He really can put in good runs first up. And look, there's a lot of other chances, such as the nature of the race. But at this stage, really happy to be with Set Square. If we get any information overnight that something's not quite right with her, then certainly we'll reflect that in the figures, and we can always wait for the yard report. But certainly with the KPI horses, just in closing, that have gone so well for us recently, Petit Falou is the first one. Onto the next one, which is Disposition, race 5, number 8. None in race 6. We've got race 7, number 1, Faulkner, is a KPI special. We've also backed Alpine Eagle. Noble Protector's another one that's high on the KPIs, and obviously Set Square. So, you know, we'll be pretty confident we'll have 4 or 5 really good, solid KPI bets to build our day around. Hopefully we can get a few of them up and get a bit over the line on the side. But looks a really good day. I hope we've added a little bit of clarity to the figures. And as I said at the start, things will change. But I hope you've enjoyed listening, and all the best.